And colleagues, good afternoon and good evening and warm welcome to this side event to the ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development. Kindly keep your microphones muted until we enter the questions and answers session. You will have the chance to raise questions through the chat and also take the floor if requested. Today, we are discussing a crucially important topic on small and medium-sized enterprises and the SME ecosystems in the least developed countries. It's a timely discussion given that LDC5 Conference preparations are taking place as we speak, and the next 10-year priorities are being discussed. The title of the side event is Priorities for the SME ecosystems for the next program of action for the LDCs, Missing Middle, SMEs and their productive capacities. And this side event is organized by the permanent representation of Finland to the United Nations and the permanent representation of Malawi to the United Nations, the UN Conference for Trade and Development, UNCTAD, as well as FCA Investments. I'm pretty excited to be moderating this session today. So my name is Jussi Ojala, and I work at Finchurch Aid as an executive representative for private sector development. FCA is the largest Finnish international aid organization. We operate in 13 countries where the needs are most dire, most of them being LDC countries. FCA is in consultative status with ECOSOC, so organizing an event such as this together with the UN and other key partners is very much at the core of our mandate. Let me next tell you with few words what to expect from this side event. The next up will be the opening, official opening of this side event, followed by a short introduction to the theme. And after that, we are having a panel discussion with the participants that I will introduce a bit later. The panelists, they have a fairly short interventions to start with, so there will be time for reflections, both between the panelists and with the participants in the following questions and answers session. So we welcome questions through the chat, and you can also then ask the floor in the chat, please. And now I have the great honor of inviting Ambassador Jukka Salovaara, the permanent representative of Finland to the United Nations, to open this side event. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. It's good to see you, Jussi, and dear friends, dear colleagues. I am very glad to welcome you to the side event on the missing middle, SMEs and their productive capacities. We are hosting this event together with Malawi, UNCTAD and Finchurch Aid, and it's really good to partner with my good friend Ambassador Perks of Malawi. For the first time in more than 20 years, extreme poverty in the world is increasing and the achievement of SDGs is under serious threat. The pandemic has demonstrated how central the leaving no one behind principle must be in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Innovation and inclusive digital development play an important role in building back a better and greener. There is no need to invest in overall digital skills and harness innovation in the private sector to drive a recovery, renewal and resilience of economies and societies. Finland supports the development of new models and platforms for enhancing innovation and co-creation to meet the SDGs. Cross-border and multi-stakeholder collaboration between civil society, diaspora, private sector and institutional investors is key to achieve the 2030 agenda. Dear friends, Finland has spearheaded innovation in its development cooperation for almost 2 decades. Through long-term bilateral and regional programs, we have strengthened policies and capabilities that support innovation and entrepreneurship in LDCs. Micro, small and medium-sized enterprises are an engine of growth. Up to 90% of worldwide businesses are MSMEs, and they employ 2/3 of the total workforce. They play a critical role in creating and sustaining jobs, including in the informal sector. It is important to adopt systemic approaches in supporting these MSMEs. Focus on enhancing collaboration between all relevant organizations in the ecosystem, from bigger and smaller companies and research organizations to business support organizations and the public sector, is needed to strengthen the overall innovativeness and inclusive digitalization of LDCs. One key piece in the puzzle is ensuring that micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, the MSMEs, can access finance. We are proud financiers of FCA investments presented here today. Based on our own experience and our values, Finland has made a long-term commitment to digital cooperation and innovation at the global level, where we advocate and work in partnership to enhance inclusive human rights-based innovation and digital development. We are strong advocates of digital inclusion. For the moment, the benefits of digitalization and new technologies are unequally distributed in and between countries. Prerequisites for digital business must be strengthened to support the growth of MSMEs. It is essential that the international community work in greater partnership to support digital transformation of the private sector in a sustainable, inclusive and human rights-based manner. In our digital age, no one should be left behind. Gender digital divide is also a real concern. The proportion of women using the internet globally is 48% compared to 58% of men. The gap is relatively small in developed countries, but big in the LDCs, where 24% of men, but only 14% of women use the internet. Finland is a proud co-lead at the Generation Equality Action Coalition on Technology and Innovation for Gender Equality, where we, together with our partners such as UN Women, the ITU, and Microsoft, aim at bridging the gender gap relating to digital skills and digitalization. Finally, I would like to note that Finland has supported the Office of the High Representative for LDCs, OHRLLS, in developing science-based recommendations for the LDC5 Conference to be held in 2022. As part of the preparation process, we will arrange an academic conference, Helsinki LDC Future Forum in Helsinki in August-September 2021. We are convinced that our discussions today will feed into this very same LDC preparation process and provide more tools to understand better specific situation of the LDCs and their economies. With these words, I thank you once again for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, and it's easy to concur about the role of Finland and the constructive role and collaborative way how the government of Finland is really engaging, and also the innovative ways of engaging development and also financing for development. And I think we would know as Finchurch Aid and FCA investments, because we've been really on the gaining side of this cooperation, and we really look forward to continuing the good cooperation. So moving on, a small introduction to the theme before I introduce the panelists and unleash the panel. Then the missing middle, it refers to the relative lack of mid-sized enterprises in LDCs, where micro and small firms are the clear majority, and there are only a few large enterprises then, but the middle is really missing. And this means that also their contribution to the gross national income of the LDCs can be less than a third of the high-income countries. And given that the GNI is one of the key criteria of the LDC category, this connection between the SME's success or failure is a matter of priority for these countries. But there are some clouds, so not all SMEs want to grow in LDCs, or they don't want to be sustainable. Not all take gender seriously or environmental concerns. Yet there are those who want to do things right and which should be supported, even if the enabling environment is not there. But it's clear that these companies and ecosystems, they need a special focus, especially in an LDC setting. And I'm sure today the panelists will bring some solutions, so I'm really looking forward to those. Then again, also the international actors have some challenges and losing faith when it comes to the supporting SMEs in LDCs. Discussing with one DFI recently, they said that they have burnt their fingers with SMEs, indicating distrust even to the path that we have taken. But I would say that no one is saying that it's an easy road. But what we are saying more is that it's a matter of it's not a matter of if, but rather how. And why is that? My colleague Hani Al-Meghari and I have been researching on this very theme of this side event today, and the interviews and the literature they reveal quite staggering details, I think, of the sector. One quote being that entrepreneurship in developing countries is the most understudied important global economic phenomenon today. It's a heavy statement. Another one in our interviews, a person with many decades of experience from LDCs and their economies referred the SME ecosystems in the African LDCs as a matter of world order. I think that tells volumes. But actually, there's much hope, and let me say a few things that at least brings me hope, and it's this that you know, the organizers of this side event, we are not alone, but there's a firm basis to build on. So along with UNCTAD, I think from international community alone, actors like UNCDF, International Labour Organization, the EU, International Trade Center, the IFC, Dutch Good Growth Fund, Cordate, they have all invested in finding solutions since years. Churaco, I think we have a representative here today. They are also one example that things can work. And now the momentum is there really in the current preparations of the LDC5 conference. The second thing that gives me much hope is that actually much of the commitments that are needed for the LDCs and also for the kind of basis for the SME ecosystems, they are already there. So if you look at the SDG 17.11 or the 17.2, really it's excellent commitment that the international community have done for the LDCs. Now we only need pragmatic solutions. And it's not all about money, as we will be hearing today. And the third aspect maybe is that I'm referring to the partners that we have put this side event together. It's really something that I consider too rare to have this kind of ecosystem approach, that you bring actors in a collaborative way from different sides of the so-called ecosystems together. And what a panel we have today. So I'm very happy to start introducing you first, and maybe you can wave your hand. People can of course see your name too, but Rolf Träger, who is the chief of the least developed countries section of UNCTAD. And UNCTAD is the UN organization, which is the focal point in the UN system for the integrated treatment of trade and development and interrelated issues in the areas of finance, technology, investment, and sustainable development. He's coordinating the research and writings of the annual flagship publication, the Least Developed Countries Report. This publication has done in-depth analysis of different issues, including entrepreneurship, technology, productive capacities, structural transformation, and financing for development. Based on his research work, Rolf organizes and delivers capacity building and training activities for policymakers and researchers on development issues. Great to have you, Rolf. And the second panelist, so I'm introducing all the panelists now so we can then dive into the panel. The second panelist represents an impact investor called FCA Investments. Jukka-Pekka Kärkkäinen is the CEO of FCA Investments, a subsidiary of FCA. So FCA saw the value of building private sector expertise on strong NGO foundation, which has basic infrastructure in place in countries where it operates. FCAI's primary objective is to make funding and skills available for economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable SMEs in developing countries and fragile states. Finnish government provided FCAI seed funding of 16 million euros as a loan in 2018. Prior to joining FCAI, Junnu, as he's called, has been working at Helsinki Stock Exchange 7 years as a portfolio manager in the largest pension fund in Finland. And from 2005 to 2017, he worked as a partner and CFO as a logistics service company operating in Tanzania. The company grew in sustainable way from $100,000 turnover to $24 million USD in 10 years, creating 200 sustainable jobs. Welcome, Junnu. Our third panelist is representing an SME from an LDC country, Somalia. So Leila Omar is the co-founder and managing director of SLA Innovative Energy Solutions, Solarland Africa. SLA is an SME that operates in renewable energy in Somalia. SLA's initial business model has been engineering, procurement, and construction, and this choice has enabled SLA to execute more than 300 sites with a combined capacity exceeding 2.4 megawatts during the first 4 years of operation. Leila has worked in 30 countries in Africa, and there I need to stop for a while. 30 countries is a lot, including with Nokia. Since 2013, she is increasingly focusing on the needs and opportunities in her home country, Somalia, in renewable energy. When I asked around about Leila, people knowing her emphasize how important role model she is for the youth, for the men, and especially for the women in her context, showing all that it is possible to do sustainable business, understanding the context and environment. So happy to have you, Leila. The fourth panelist comes from Uganda. John Kakungulu Palugembe is the executive director of the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises Uganda, the umbrella business association of all MSMEs in Uganda. The association has a membership of 112,500 in 20 sectors. John is also the former executive director of the Uganda Small Scale Industries Association. He possesses a Master in Business Administration from the University of Oxford and a Master of Public Administration from Harvard University. A warm welcome, John. And last but not least is Michael Ingram from Accenture. Accenture is a global professional services company with the leading capabilities in digital, cloud, and security, operating in more than 120 countries and with over 500,000 staff. Michael Ingram is a senior manager in Accenture Development Partnerships, ADP. ADP helps organizations in the international development sector dramatically increase their impact in areas such as global healthcare, education, financial inclusion, and energy access. By applying Accenture's people's talents capabilities and experienced ADPs empowering their clients, including INGOs, foundations, and government financial institutions to improve millions of lives in developing world. Since its launching in 2003, ADP has completed more than 1,800 projects across 95 countries. Mike has an experience of over 20 years in consulting the international development and banking sectors. He has conducted both qualitative and quantitative assessments in the business enabling environment for the World Bank and USAID. He has also managed a network of researchers and practitioners focused on SME and entrepreneurship policy research at Innovations for Poverty Action. Thanks for being here, Mike. So I'm slightly biased to say myself, but I think this is quite a dream team for discussing the SME ecosystems in the LDCs. And first up is Rolf, please. And your indicative title is How MSMEs in LDCs can contribute to developing productive capacities and fostering structural transformations in LDCs. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, so good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. First of all, I'd like to say that it's a pleasure for UNCTAD to partner with the mission of Finland, the mission of Malawi, and with HCA Investments in the organization of this side event on this issue, which is so crucial in the process of preparation of LDC5. So I'm going to shortly introduce some of our findings of our research on entrepreneurship in LDCs. Well, I mean, I guess we all know what the major challenges of LDCs are in terms of poverty, in terms of underdevelopment, in terms of lacking resources, etc. Well, it turns out that entrepreneurship can give a major contribution to solving many of the development challenges of LDCs. And how is this? Well, it's simply because entrepreneurship has a major role in developing productive capacities in terms of capital accumulation, in terms of infrastructure, human capital development, technological development, etc. So productive capacities development is one of the major components of sustainable development. But at the same time, entrepreneurship also, and by the same token, also plays a crucial role in terms of generating innovation and growth. And it's both directly in terms of growth of their own enterprises, but also in terms of the contribution to economic growth of the overall economy where these enterprises are operating. And when you have the development of productive capacities together with innovation and enterprise growth, what we get, you get the structural transformation of the economies, which means that the economies transfer to more modern economic structure, more performant types of economic activities and sectors, and you have the transfer of resources like capital and labor to more modern and more performing sectors, and thereby you have increasing earnings, higher per capita incomes as well, which means that the contribution of entrepreneurship through structural transformation is absolutely crucial for countries to reach sustainable development. Now, but it's not all types of enterprises which contribute positively to economic transformation. So what are the types of enterprises which contribute most to economic transformation? Well, it's basically the opportunity-driven enterprises, those which are looking to exploit market opportunities and to develop them, rather than the survivalist motivated entrepreneurships. It's also those enterprises, those companies and those firms which are most likely to innovate and thereby to introduce new products, new technologies, to improve to introduce these new goods, new services, and to improve the productive processes in all sectors of economic activity, be it agriculture, industry, or services. And thereby, these are the most dynamic firms and which are most likely to grow in time, or to use the lingo of entrepreneurship, for instance, the gazelles. But what is the reality of of the enterprise sector in least developed countries? Well, in this chart, you can see that the red dots are the LDCs. And vertically, you can see what is the intention of companies to create 6 or more jobs in the next 5 years, so over the middle term. So you can see that that is a very small proportion of enterprise and LDCs which have plans to create more jobs. And if you have a look at the proportion between opportunity-driven enterprises as opposed to necessity-motivated enterprises, you see that there's a very large share of necessity-motivated entrepreneurs in LDCs. What's the consequence? The consequence is that most of the enterprises in LDCs, they all operate in low value-added sectors. They have low growth potential, and therefore they have a very short life cycle. They do not endure typically in time. And in most cases, they are so-called Me Too business, meaning that they are active in traditional activities rather than being active in innovation. And therefore, most of these enterprises have very limited potential to transform the structure of their economies. So now, what has to be done in order to change this landscape? We are discussing today the ecosystem for enterprises, particularly for SMEs. So what are the policies which can improve the ecosystem in which SMEs and also the micro enterprises are evolving? Well, in order for enterprises to play their role in contributing to structural transformation, these entrepreneurship policies, they need to be targeting structural transformation. By targeting the structural transformation of the economy, they will have entrepreneurship contributing to poverty eradication, to job creation, to industrialization and inclusiveness. Remember how many times already just in this side event we have recalled the importance of inclusive development. And the point is that particularly the startups and the companies in LDCs, they're faced with a series of challenges. And how can these challenges be, what can be the policy response to them be? First of all, through horizontal policies, like those targeting the development of the financial system, the development of infrastructure, particularly in terms of electricity, energy, internet, etc., but also more specifically the policies which are aimed at helping enterprises formalize. We know that the vast majority of firms in LDCs are in the informal sector. But also there are more targeted vertical policies, for instance, extension in services, particularly those in the fields of technology and in the fields of management, etc. So the very specific and targeted enterprise-specific policies. And it's important to remember that if you want to have comprehensive entrepreneurship policies in LDCs, these need to be policies that are targeting the whole life cycle of companies, not just startups, but also mature companies, etc. And why is this so important? It's because you need different policy instruments, different programs for startups, for young companies, and for mature companies. And so it's important to accompany, for policymakers to accompany the whole life cycle of enterprises, including even the exit. I mean, it's the whole, really the whole life cycle. And this highlights the importance of a very important feature of entrepreneurship policy in LDCs, but also in other types of countries, which is the constant dialogue between the public and the private sector. This is absolutely crucial for successful entrepreneurship policy. And in this policy of interaction, you have interactive learning, you have co-development of the private sector and of the public sector. And hence this collaboration, this interaction, this creation of synergies is very important to develop the ecosystem for SMEs and for enterprise development more generally in the LDCs. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to our upcoming discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rolf. And it was an important speech or intervention on the inclusive development, on transformational entrepreneurship, and I was especially noting the life cycle, how you described it, life cycle of the companies. Very good. Next up, please, Junnu, you have the indicative title of Missing Middle in LDCs as an opportunity, Missing Middle as an opportunity for sustainable development in LDCs. Junnu, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jussi. FCA Investments is an investment company that mobilizes finance for missing middle. We started by investing in existing missing middle funds in order to learn their valuable lessons so that we don't need to reinvent the wheels again. We then started our own direct investments, first in Uganda and then in Somalia. Our investments range from 100,000 to 1 million euros per company. We don't invest in missing middle because we can make a lot of money out of it. We invest in missing middle because we see it as a huge opportunity for sustainable development. Since SMEs don't have access to capital, we have the luxury to choose the most sustainable companies and give them the needed skills and capital, which then helps them to compete against those who are not compliant and sustainable. This is really an opportunity to incentivize good conduct. It is an opportunity to create decent jobs in a sustainable way. Based on our experience operating in challenging context and the feedback we have received from like-minded actors, we can highlight 4 main bottlenecks that should be addressed to have scalable solution for missing middle. First of all, high collateral requirements and short-term financing. That is what banks offer. It doesn't work. We need to offer something else. Secondly, SMEs are vulnerable to market fluctuations and shocks. The smaller the company is, the less risk buffers it has. And this, of course, causes high default rates. Thirdly, SMEs have limited technical capacity. That is obvious. And also there is data asymmetry between investors and investees. And due to this data asymmetry, due diligence costs are high. And since the transactions are small, the transaction costs become relatively far too high for small investments. There are 2 main trends that are widely adapted to address these bottlenecks. Firstly, risk protection tools like guarantees or first loss or second loss protections. And secondly, technical assistance. Both these interventions are necessary. While we have been building track record for raising finance, we have concluded that traditional private equity model doesn't work for missing middle. That is why we are promoting a new model, which is a combination of services and finance. We believe this new model addresses the bottlenecks better. So we really believe the trick is in services. We are in a process to set up a missing middle opportunity fund, which by the name sounds like a fund, but it is actually a non-financial service company which provides essential services for sustainable SMEs and which can and aims to invest up to 1 million to each of its clients. So the service comes first and the investments follow. Essential services approach would allow the companies to concentrate on their core business. For example, for many companies, finance is the nasty side effect one has to deal with. The attitude, of course, changes over once they understand the benefit of finance function. But it really doesn't make sense to me that all SMEs have their own CFOs. These small companies can't anyway afford to have expensive CFOs which would have the capacity to bring the companies to the level what DFI investors need. They typically have accountants which would need minimum of 5 years of training to grow into CFO position. Then again, if a company wants to operate in a transparent way, there should be no problem at least partially outsource the financial management. Such conditions would actually help us to select the SMEs which are serious with the transparency. At minimum, we want to be in control how the financial management is organized. By selling the financial management service, we break the information asymmetry problem. We see the books of the company and that will reduce the cost of financing since we become insiders of the company. We really don't need much of a due diligence. Our essentials as a service concept makes a lot of economic sense. We can be experts in IT, HR, ESG, marketing, you name it. We can professionalize procurement of assets or other outsourced services related to IT or insurance or auditing. We can utilize economics of scale by representing multiple companies as one. For auditors, we can prepare books and auditing materials in unified format, which will further reduce the cost. We believe this kind of model, combination of essential services and finance, can make SMEs more resilient against market fluctuations and shocks. This kind of a partner can always keep some dry powder in stock for emergencies, and it might have tools to negotiate some extra support from its networks. Working with this kind of partner will definitely speed up the process of an SME to become bankable for DFIs. The only problem we see is that, as I said earlier, many companies see finance as a nasty side effect one needs to deal with. They are not ready to pay commercial price for the services we would like to offer. There are also trust issues related to this. Companies don't want to share their information to others. So there is quite a bit of work to do, and it is obvious that the pricing of these services need to be subsidized. There must be technical assistance funding available for this kind of services, at least in the beginning. We also seek support from multinational companies like Accenture. If we could provide world-class digital solutions for our clients, I'm sure we can give competition edge for those SMEs who contribute positively to the achievement of SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Junnu, for painting the picture of challenges, but really focusing on the solutions, that what are you doing and where partners are actually then wanted. Please do note the chat, all the panelists, so there might be questions that are coming to you, so use your pen or whichever means you have, but note them down and you will have a chance to respond to them. But we move forward, and I'm happy to invite next Leila Omar, with the title Challenges and Solutions from an SME Perspective. Leila, please, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you. I think you're still muted. No.
Now? Can you hear me, Yussi? Good. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good evening and good morning. My name is Leila Omar. As Yussi tell everything about what I have to say, so we don't have so much time and I'm not going to repeat the same thing. But I'm the managing director of the Solar Land Africa. We started this company here in Somalia about 2015 when I visited here in the country. I'm originally from Somalia, but I've been living all my life in Finland. So I'm the diaspora who moved back. And I saw the opportunity about the country is missing a lot of knowledge. I decided about as long as I have one and I have an opportunity also to start in my own business here, I will do something about it. So that's where I started. I moved everything to here and the company started from there. So since then, I'm still here. I live here. I usually visit sometimes somewhere else, but most of the time I spend my time here in Somalia, in the second capital city in Somalia, in Hargeisa. I think some of you might know about the Somaliland capital city, but I feel still the country is still in Somalia. So if I speak about the medium and the small entrepreneurs, their problems or their challenge, I will say, or the solution, what I think maybe it will help, it's the most of the challenge what the small businesses and the medium businesses they have here, it's the finance, lack of access of finance. The local banks or the local investors, they are very high demand in giving the block of to access of any finance or any loans. The second issue what we have most of the banks or the investors, it is about the demand is very high and the requirement, the loan is very short also. So giving that opportunity, only the one who can afford it about to provide all those their demands is the one who have the access. The other major problem what we have here, and no one really realizing about that, it is about the time. And the time I mean it about as long as you have your own professional or running for the business, you want to run for the business, but you don't want to do everything by yourself. So in that point about all the professional services are missing on the country. And the other side of that also, it's about a little bit challenge as a private sector. Who is the person who can provide for you also that service and how you can trust for that person, your information or anything what you are giving, how really protecting they are. Because the country we live, the other issues what they have, it is the country, it's based on there are people. You can hear me? Yeah. The other issue it is about the people, they may have they can afford it about to start a company and to run for that, but basically the ideas or the knowledge of to start the business, it's missing. So when they see somebody started something, they will copy and start it for that. So most of the important issue for the small and the medium businesses owners are the trust. Who you giving your informations and how good enough that will be or how safe that can be. The other issue what we usually face around here, it's about the legal frame agreement in the commercial legal agreement from the government. So every year, everything are changing. So the tax is changing, the license is changing. I mean, it's nothing subtle what you can start it and continuous every year, what you have to renew it in your own license. You have a new rules or something change or price get higher or something extra coming. So that's the another things where they're really giving about a lot of the unsettled thing about the tool. My watch is running. The unsettled things about for the business too. The major bigger problem what we face is a lack of the professional staff. So we have a lot of the graduated students also coming from the university. There are many universities around here, but they are not in that standard or that level when they graduate to come to work for you, and then you can give the job and to do it. So basically you feel it's the same about to get the new students or to get somebody who doesn't really have that much knowledge. So they become equal. So the university education is a very low level. So in that point also that we are facing a lot of problems about from the staff. Many of us, like the company who want to succeed, they are bringing from abroad for the staffs. Even the country, they have a lot of the young graduating students who's unemployed at the moment. And that's also the other sad part of it. So it making also the new company more expensive when you have to bring the expat to the country. The other major issue what we really face it is about the country missing and needed so much about the foreign investors to come in the country. And those, they have to be the one who's preparing or ready to take a risk. Because when I'm saying in the risk, I mean it about we have the local bank who I say for the beginning about that they are demanding quite high informations and the guarantees and so many different levels of the document or someone who's there as a collateral. They are when the foreign company they come in also, if they become a same level, then the middle and the small businesses they are still stuck in the middle of there. So what we really as a private sector expecting it is about the donators, the investors, the new banks coming from abroad, they should be a little bit prepared to support about those who cannot really make it in that level and cannot provide about in that 100%, like they secure for the lost. They have to take the risky about when they see about someone who capable of the companies, whether it's really developing or have the better future or better plan, when they go in the country, in the company, and they see about how the company internally really work about their documenting the work they do, their incomes for everything, and then based on that one about they can trust the company or they can finance the company. So I mean it about they come a little bit softer than the local ones, what we have at the moment about as a bank. The third things it's about those banks what is locally we face as a small and middle companies. When I say we, I'm always talking about my level and then the one is lower than me. What we face from the banks, it is about their interest. It's very high. The period of the loan is very short, and it's a lot of high demand, documentary or in collateral or they are demanding from you whatever you need it from almost about 200%. So that means about when you see in that level, you're stepping back. And without the access of the finance or the investors, it's slowing down also for the medium and the small businesses to grow. So it means about we need the groups who coming in as investors, as donators, as a new bank coming to the country, as anyone who involved about the finance to be developed, they should be coming in a different groups than the one existing. So the entrepreneurs, medium and small ones, they have more opportunity to develop by themselves. The country, most of the businesses are run, or they are small and the medium. They have few big companies who really doing about everything. And most of those companies also that they feel it about that they have to be on it everything by themselves or doing everything by themselves. Same as the small business also do the same thing. And the reason why we are doing for that also, as I say, it's a lack of the service providers. And also sometimes it's about can you really give all your details or your informations for those service provider. So if the country we have it about as a finance investors, donators to come in the country also this kind of a service, then probably like it can be a little support for the private sectors. So I think like both sides, like the money sometimes cannot solve all the problem, but at least the knowledge and the education can be the one important things for us also, if those things they are available in the country. I think like my time is up, so and thanks to everyone to give me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Leila, and I'm sure you have a chance to speak still in this session because your views are very, very valuable and very unique also. And I picked up many issues from your rich intervention, and I'm happy this is also recorded. But you talked about the trust issue, which is key, the regulatory framework. I think this money not being everything, but for example, what education or the lacking of the education is causing, and what opportunities there are perhaps in the supporting the SMEs and whole ecosystems through the education. I think these are something that we can hopefully discuss a bit later, and hopefully other panelists can also reflect them. But we move forward, and next up, John, please. The experience of SME development in Uganda. I think you are quite exceptionally placed to discuss this topic, representing so many SMEs in Uganda. Please, John, the floor is yours. We just saw your picture disappearing, but hopefully you are still there. At least the mic is muted.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello. So I wanted to share presentation. I'm just trying to see if how easy that will be.
While you are at it, I'm just encouraging all the participants to post your questions. It's too silent in the chat currently, so I'm sure all these interventions have provoked some agreement or disagreement or solutions or questions. So please keep them coming and you will get answers. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I don't know if you're seeing my screen.
You see it black.
Black?
Now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the screen?
Now it's okay.
Okay, excellent. So I am making a small presentation about the Federation of SMEs and what we do. Sorry, I'm failing to control this. So I'm making a small presentation about the Federation of SMEs and what we do. So the Federation of SMEs is the umbrella body for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Uganda. As an association, we stand to represent. We are a voice for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. If you notice, I just want to give you a brief about Uganda. Uganda has a population of about 42 million, fertility rate of 5 per woman, GNI per capita of $750 US, population growth 3.7%, and other issues. We are an LDC for sure. And I'll talk about the SME sector later, but I'll say that the Federation of SMEs, as I earlier mentioned, is a voice for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. We're a non-profit business association bringing together over 112,500 enterprises. We were founded in 1990, but were reorganized in 2017. So our vision is to be the apex body promoting and protecting the interests of small and medium-sized businesses. And our mission is to ensure that SMEs are equipped for success and growth through there being a conducive business environment and them having access to quality business development services. So in terms of overview, Uganda's private sector is dominated by micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, which is equivalent to about 1,100,000 enterprises. So this is not different from other LDCs, particularly in Africa. So MSMEs in this country compose 90% of the entire private sector. They account for 80% of manufactured output and about 75% of GDP. MSMEs in Uganda employ over 8.5 million people, which is equivalent to 90% of total non-farm workers. Now, in terms of split, my colleagues were talking about the missing middle. I'll say that 93% of all MSMEs are micro, about validates what has been mentioned by. What makes our association unique? One, we have a clear focus on speaking for SMEs. We have a countrywide presence. We have a broad membership. We are independent from government, and this is very important. We simply represent the interests of our members. We are adaptable. We work with SMEs to create jobs, and we unlock the potential of the SME sector. I'll give a Rolf mentioned about the importance of public-private dialogue if we are to have robust SME ecosystems. And I wouldn't agree more. And I think as a federation, we occupy a unique space there in terms of advocating and raising the concerns of our members to government so that jointly we can improve the business ecosystem. So I'll just give a brief snapshot of the ecosystem in Uganda, and I would say this is also representative in other economies. As a federation, we recognize that if you don't have a voice, it becomes very difficult for government to understand what's going on in the sector. And that's why we're working with our colleagues in neighboring countries to see that we have equivalent bodies like the federation that can be able to raise those issues to stakeholders within the ecosystem. Now, I would say that in terms of financial support, what you have is that you have a bit of, you have microfinance institutions, you have DFIs, you have commercial banks, and you're starting to see a bit of venture capital and private equity. The challenge, of course, is that you have a lot of informal businesses are relying on microfinance institutions and informal lenders, and the bulk of them are actually not even borrowing. So what you see is that a few commercial banks and other DFIs are running after a few small and medium-sized businesses that are not well prepared. And in that case, I'd agree with my colleague who said that the issue of technical capacities, the lack of technical capacity is a big, big gap. So most of these institutions tend to suffer with how do you ensure that you bridge that gap. Then there's the issue of infrastructural support, co-working spaces, workspaces for SMEs in general. You're seeing some coming up now, but they're insufficient and they're not well spread countrywide. The professional BDS services tend to be expensive. So most SMEs can't afford legal support, accounting support, business consulting. And that's why I agree that not every SME needs to have an accountant or lawyer or whatever. Some of these can be shared services. In terms of business development, you're seeing a lot of donor. I mean, what can I say? I'm saying the BDS market is starting to get distorted because you see a lot of donor support going towards BDS training. A lot of it is free training, and the challenge with free training is that the quality may not be as good as might be required. So, in terms of policy, I would say government has laid out a very clear policy framework. we have a bit of challenges in terms of implementation, but I think overall, I would say that the policy framework is quite conducive. And in terms of business associations, I would say, yes, you have a number of business associations, but it is not mandatory to belong to any. So it means that ultimately SMEs pick and choose where to go or not to belong to an association at all, which is a pity. Now, in terms of where we see gaps, I would say this is kind of a graph that shows the entrepreneur in the center, because the entrepreneur cannot survive on their own. So we see gaps in terms of the education system. It's very theoretical. SMEs are not getting the kind of practical skills from the young people that they need. So you see a gap, which you see in many countries, between the demand and supply of skills. There are no very robust industrial advisors and mentors. I think we will do with more robust venture capital and equity investment. Obviously, the issue of professional services and BDS is critical, and ultimately the regulatory framework itself needs improving. We see that the regulatory framework, whereas it is supportive, tends to look at the informal sector as the problem. So they look at SMEs as the problem in order to grow the tax base, which is not necessarily the case. So as a federation, what are we doing to make improvements in the ecosystem? I would say we are running a number of programs. We have been running for a number of years what we call a digital skilling and literacy campaign with the Uganda Communications Commission. Under this program, we've trained over 30,000 SMEs across the country, and we've targeted this towards particularly young people and women. We are also managing a small grant scheme in response to COVID-19, a small grant scheme for MSMEs that are owned by refugees and hosting communities in Uganda, with the support of the ILO, International Labour Organization, under the Prospects program. We also have what we call the SME Academy, through which we offer training and support to MSMEs, among others. So I think that is my presentation. I would say that you need, as I conclude, I would say that for there to be strong MSME ecosystems, you need to have robust and strong business associations that are member-run and member-owned, and that are sustainable. And I think this is where a lot of support is also needed going forward. Otherwise, you'll see a lot of people coming in with stopgap measures because you don't have a system of sustainably providing these services. Lastly, the Federation is setting up a network of small business development centers, and maybe we can talk on how best we can work on rolling these out with partners that are interested. But we are rolling these out in order to offer shared business development services. And I see there's a lot of synergy with FCA investments, and I would therefore be willing to talk with them about this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. And really a vast experience that and reach that your organization has. And I remember from some of our earlier talks how you were talking about how you are catalyzing similar initiatives, perhaps in neighboring countries, and this is maybe something you can reflect later on. But now moving on to Michael Ingram with the title of The Contribution of Digital Technologies and Shared Services to SME Expansion in LDCs. I understand, Mike, that you are having a forward-looking view, and this is very much welcomed, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jussi, and thank you to the all of the organizers for inviting me here to speak. As Jussi shared, I'm looking at the contribution, or maybe the potential contribution, that digital and shared services can have for small and medium enterprise growth in LDCs. You know, historically, I think that policymakers and researchers have really looked at the micro constraints to growth for SMEs through three lenses: that of access to finance, access to markets, and access to human capital, recognizing that that sits kind of within a macro space of the investment climate, including infrastructure, as well as the business enabling environment, looking at the legal and regulatory either enablers or constraints to growth. And what I think we're seeing over the last, decade or so is that within each of these spaces, we're beginning to see technology and digital technology specifically play an increasing role in helping to combat some of these barriers. Within the access to finance space, I think most would be quite familiar with the advance of mobile payments or digital payments as a mechanism to make it easier for financial institutions or non-financial institutions to service a new subsegment of clients, as well as to help drive cost out for small and medium enterprises that use those technologies. In the access to market space, I think we see platforms, whether it be procurement-based platforms or other platforms that facilitate developing country entrepreneurs in being able to access a new customer base. WeConnect is an example of one of these where women-owned enterprises are able to serve customers in developed countries around the world. Lastly, in access to human capital, I think most people may immediately leap to something like digital training, which certainly is becoming more and more ubiquitous. But I think as many of those who preceded me with their speeches would argue is that, as we begin to move beyond micro into small and medium enterprises, the sophistication of the solutions that need to be provided are increasing. And that even though training may be kind of the first reaction that is maybe what we've done previously or what we know how to do, as businesses in least developed countries become more sophisticated, the complexity of solutions that they require to become more productive and more competitive increase. And so though not in any way intended to be exhaustive, I highlight here kind of two examples of things that even some of the other presenters have highlighted as well. One being shared services, that instead of beginning to train someone how to better manage their finances, when finances aren't the core competency of the business, aren't the competitive differentiator of the business, looking at opportunities to leverage shared service providers to be able to support SMEs is certainly an opportunity that I think needs to be explored. In finance is obviously only one of many examples. Another topic that clearly we're seeing with Accenture, obviously within our commercial base, is moving clients into the cloud, recognizing that just-in-time infrastructure, software, et cetera, are solutions that are inherently scalable and present less initial capital investments to be able to move towards digital solutions. Now, clearly, when I'm starting to talk about things like shared services and cloud, I'm not talking about micro, and in many circumstances, I may not be talking about small. I'm talking about businesses that are beginning to scale, but if we don't create the capacity for those growth-oriented businesses in least developed economies to create jobs and compete nationally, regionally, and internationally by using the same sorts of solutions that are inherently being used in more developed markets, I feel like we're doing them a disadvantage. Clearly, when we start to move towards the digital, there's an obvious barrier, especially in least developed economies, with respect to infrastructure. Whether it be reliable power, reliable internet connectivity, there are challenges in being able to effectively take advantage of some of these solutions. But ultimately, we see that investments are being made, progress is happening, and I bring forth here a quote from an article that literally was published last week by the Atlantic Council, highlighting two examples of big tech making investments in connectivity via subsea cables that will positively impact customers on the African continent, as an example of really just progress that we see being made. I'll sum up here and hopefully create some space back for the panel to have a discussion. But, you know, I think there's a question of who's going to serve these markets. You know, we're talking about challenging investment climates. We're talking about, you know, SMEs in the least developed countries unlikely being the target client market of a lot of typical commercial service providers. And individually, SMEs themselves are hard to demand attention. But I think where we can catalyze this market, and I think, you know, who spoke at the beginning made some very interesting suggestions of where FCAI is participating in this space. But I think there's going to be need for collaboration between private sector, impact investment, government, civil society, et cetera, to come together and begin to explore and develop models that might work for SMEs within these markets. I think that ultimately, ultimately, if we don't start to explore some of these solutions, I feel like we're doing a disservice to these growth-oriented businesses who've already demonstrated a lot of capacity to be as successful as they are in these challenging environments. And, you know, by beginning to help them, you know, hopefully we'll provide an example and begin to develop models that can be leveraged into the future. Again, I thank UC and the organizers for inviting me and look forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. And thanks also for raising the bar in a way, because I think this kind of reality check is very useful. And also talk about the scale, because this is it's a structural issue that we are discussing, and not like individual success stories. I think I'm still inviting the chat, please, to continue. And there's one question or comment. Is somebody quicker than me to read it? And you're welcome to speak also. Yes, okay. But there was one suggestion actually that, and this is a technical question to Rolf, that could perhaps the UNCTAD platform where the announcement also for this event was published, could that serve also as a platform for the presentations to be shared later on, because we do not have the contact details of the participants. I don't know if this is possible.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the suggestion. That is exactly what we want to do. We want to post the presentations and the videos so that people can go over the discussions again, and we'll write also a short summary, and everything will be posted on the same website. Thank you. So, I mean, this was in the plans. Thank you.
Excellent. That's good news. And please use the chat for asking the floor. And while waiting for you to type, I think it would be good to have another round of discussions, because I'm sure you got all the panelists ideas from each other, which you may want to reflect. And maybe we can start again in the same order from Rolf. And I would also, Rolf, invite you to bring us closer to the LDC process, because you and UNCTAD you are very well following the LDC process and the LDC5 and the next 10 years. So that what kind of observations you might have based on this panel already. But of course, you then please do comment or any colleagues who have been raising issues in the panel. So please, Rolf.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And just to recall a couple of basic facts on the LDC5 process. For those of you who are not very familiar, every 10 years, the international community gets together to discuss the development challenges of LDCs and to design a plan or a strategy, a plan of action technically for the coming 10 years. So the next time when this is happening will be LDC5. So that's the 5th United Nations Conference on the least developed countries, which will take place in Doha, Qatar in January 22. So less than 1 year from now. And in preparation for this, there's a whole series of events which are taking place to discuss different issues, including this event. But the important thing is that right now you have consensus building going on the priorities for the next plan of action. And there are a couple of issues which are being discussed, like the importance, to take into account the shock of COVID and the world recession and the risk of so-called K-shaped recovery, with some countries forging ahead and some others falling behind, particularly many of the LDCs. And then, of course, within this context, the role that entrepreneurship can play will be crucial. And I think that if I can reflect on some of the issues which have been brought up in the discussion, that let's say the lackings and the problems of the ecosystem of LME, of the SME development and growth, they are pretty much common to most LDCs. It's amazing how many of the challenges come up again and again. But also what is interesting is that in terms of solutions, I think that it's becoming increasingly important and clear the need for different stakeholders, different types of actors to come together to solve some of these challenges, whether it's in terms of financing, whether it's in terms of technical knowledge, etc., whether it's in terms of regulatory issues, etc. And particularly these consensus building among private and public actors, among domestic and international actors. I think that this is very clear. And I think that's something that still has to be further discussed, is how to make selections in terms of those who are going to get help to get this initial seed financing, etc. Is it financial viability? Is it innovativeness? Is it technological potential, etc., etc.? And all of these issues, I think they are being debated, and we need to come up with some concrete proposals to put on the table so that hopefully they will be incorporated into the new plan of action, so that this will signify a commitment by the LDCs themselves, but also by the international community, to become much more proactive in terms of enterprise development in the LDCs. So I stop here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rolf. And Junnu, please, next. And please note the question on the risk Finnish actors in the chat.
Yes, thank you. It's asked, how do we mitigate the risk? And we have discussions with a few donors. One, I think I can mention one. We have applied political risk protection for Somalia operations from MIGA. They are busy doing due diligence on that, but clearly MIGA is showing interest to serve also SME sector and really risky countries. We also discussed with the donors about portfolio guarantee types of instruments where somebody joins and take partial risk of each and every investment, that the losses we potentially make. And yeah, we see more and more tools coming to the market. There is like in Somalia, we see that banks are supported. Every loan they give for productive sectors, they get some, let's say 10% to support technical assistant money, or how to call it. And we see similar type of facilities available. And it should help. It's really important. I also see the earlier question from Caroline, which she already answered, but just to make it clear. So we need donor support to be able to sell the services to start with, but I believe that we can make it commercial business at later stage. For Michael, I would like to respond that you are a little bit shy of whether you can do cloud services in LDCs, but just for your information, the company which I was CFO for 12 years in Tanzania, we had our ERP in cloud installed in 2017, and I believe things haven't gone worse direction. Thank you.
Very good. So digitalization really is a fact. But next, please, Leila, if you have any thoughts that you come up from the interventions by colleagues in the panel, please.
Yeah, actually, like I want to say about the Yuka, about the idea what he have for to starting those services in the country. It's quite very interesting about to get that ideas, because when I see about this, as I was mentioning about all these things they are missing in the country, sometimes all the money is not the solve of the problems. The many small, like the SMA businesses, they will be developing if they have to concentrate about their works, and then they feel like someone else take care of their businesses, whatever knowledge they don't have. Because for example, if I say like us, when we are working about and doing in our own works, we don't have time about to doing like the simple as bookkeeping. So our bookkeeping is sitting in another country. So it's extra job for us about to scan all those documents to send to him so he can do his work. So it's really like the great knowledge to know, like somebody else is thinking about that to bring to the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. And John, please, would you have some reflections?
Well, first I want to comment on the issue of the challenges that SMEs face in the area of digitalization. I think I completely agree with Michael that on one hand you have very systemic challenges, the cost of data, the infrastructure, the power, unreliable power, and so on and so forth. So I think we have to be careful as we push the digitalization agenda. We have to see how do we support African countries to address these problems. Otherwise, digital can also be a form of exclusion. For instance, right now in Uganda, most service, we're talking about e-government. So you have to pay your taxes online, you have to register a business online and so on. So if government shifts its services online without necessarily addressing these constraints, then it means that certain businesses are inevitably excluded. So I thought that's kind of critical. Thankfully, in this country, through the Uganda Communications Commission, they are addressing the infrastructure challenges, but at the same time, they are working with the Federation to address the issues of digital literacy. The other issue is about what Rolf mentioned, the issue of dialogue between the private and the private sector. And I cannot overemphasize the need for having organized associations that represent the private sector, that represents all manner of businesses, that are able to engage constructively with government. Then finally, the issue of combining finance with building technical capacities of SMEs. I think this is the correct approach. Some people just feel, oh, we'll just come to Africa, learn to a few businesses, and then just wait for it. It doesn't work that way. You have to kind of unhold them and understand how things work. And you kind of also have to understand the way things work here. Most businesses don't have boards of directors, for instance. So how do you navigate the challenges of family-owned businesses? So I think in a nutshell, that's what I can say. There's a lot of work, but I think ultimately these challenges can be resolved through a working together and through a collaboration in terms of strategies and approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and over to you, Mike.
See, there are a couple of points that I think are interesting to explore. First, I think initially Rolf had highlighted kind of the importance of, looking at those growth-driven innovative businesses, that are called, many refer to as gazelles, but I think there's this just general view of the dichotomous nature of the SME sector where you have kind of transformative versus subsistence level businesses. Ultimately, one of the challenges that many would like to overcome is how do we identify those gazelles before they grow? How do you know which businesses to support? I think it's a challenge that many have looked into. I think one of the things that's interesting about the solution that is suggesting is in some ways demand for services like this can itself be a self-identification mechanism for those growth-oriented businesses that are willing to invest some of their own capital in a solution like financial management services or audit services or what have you, can be a mechanism to help policymakers understand which are those that are primed to grow and which are those that are primed to invest in their own growth. Not that they don't need some degree of subsidization to explore solutions like this, but I think it's something that might be interesting, as you guys continue to ideate around this, that we take a look at. One of the other things, and I think Leila's comment on trust is absolutely critical. And even though, Accenture, as an example, has a tremendous amount of experience working on delivering shared service capabilities for our large commercial clients, we have to think about fit for purpose solutions. I'm not sure if small or medium-sized businesses that are run by a founder or a family business would be willing or interested to, say, outsource their financial management capability to another country. So we have to think about almost different models that are fit for purpose and designed around the clients that we're trying to focus on. And so I think that's one of those places where as we continue to explore how these models might work, thinking about, how does the demand within an LDC SME context differ from maybe where these services have been provided in parallel but different contexts. The last thing that, maybe that I would comment is, I think especially as we push into these more sophisticated services, I think really focusing on looking at incentivizing the right providers. I think too often some of these most sophisticated solutions are attempted by, service providers that maybe are experienced servicing the donors, but not actually experienced servicing the commercial sector and have experience delivering these services. And so I think, continuing to explore what that looks like, how to pull the right players in is critical to make sure that the solutions are developed and executed effectively. I think that's it for me, Steve.
Yes, thank you, Mike, very much. I think time is running out. We are supposed to close at, sorry, I don't know what the time is there, but it's 21:47 here in Helsinki. And I think we are closing. I think it's clear from this great panel and side event that we have had, that it's a process. This is only a start. We see great avenues to influence and really have the next LDC 10-year program and the LDC5 conference to be a success, to provide these inputs further. I think Rolf has been earlier indicating that we could be writing some points from this side event, you know, and share them, and then provide that as an input for the LDC process. And I think that's a great idea. And really, that was one of the take homes from me in this this side event. You know, I don't know how many times I picked up an inclusive development, multi-stakeholder cooperation. We talked about the ecosystem, models to explore cooperation or consensus building. I think this was really a topic that came up and a call really for us to work together. And then it's really not just those who are we who have been in the panel today, but it's a much broader ecosystem that we actually then want. So I would really much like to thank the panelists. You did well. The technique worked, so I'm quite happy about that. And still a special thanks to the permanent representation of Finland and Ambassador Salovara. So it was excellent to work with you and also with the permanent representation of Malawi in organizing this side event. And you know, it's just the beginning. So now the work starts. We pull up the sleeves, and please do find us. You know, you might not have our contact details there now, but Google is pretty good in finding the email contacts, and then as mentioned, so UNCTAD kindly will be serving as the platform to have the presentations that can be shared, and hopefully we can also then share the contact details, and really look forward to working with you all further. I can see Ambassador Jukka Salovara joining, but I don't know if you want to say some words here. We're of course pleased. Please.
Well, thanks, Jussi. I just wanted to thank everyone for a really good conversation, and I think that this has been such a good topic for us today, and I really want to commend the organizers in sort of convening us, and let's keep up the good work. Thank you.
With these words, I think it's been a great session, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador, still, and Karina also from the Finnish permanent representation, invaluable asset in organization. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, good day, good night, wherever you are.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Sid.